will not be attending this evening. Okay, Maurice, do we have any late items?
We have no late items, Mr. Mayor.
All right, hearing none, could I have a mover to adopt the agenda? Councillor McBain, thank you. And Councillor Goodwin seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Next up, we have adoption of the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on July the 18th. Mover, please. Councillor Dallum, thank you. And Councillor Roberts seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. And finally, the minutes of the special meeting of council held on August the 8th. Mover, please. Councillor McBain, thank you. And Councillor Oakley seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. All right, excellent. So on to the meat of the agenda tonight. First up is the proposed zoning amendment, bylaw 2722, better known as the Housing Availability and Affordability bylaw. The motion on the floor is that council approves second reading of the bylaw, and further that an electronic public hearing for this bylaw be scheduled for the special meeting on Monday, September the 12th. Mover, please. Councillor Goodwin, thank you. Councillor Roberts seconds. Been happening over the last couple of weeks. That'd be great.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not much to update. This is substantially the same report that council reviewed and received at the special meeting on August the 8th. We're here to recommend that council approve second reading of proposed bylaw 2722 and to schedule the public hearing. And a special note that would be a special meeting to be scheduled on the 12th, September the 12th at 7 p.m. No, there's been no other changes or anything proposed since the changes that were presented at the last special meeting. So there was so what's different from first reading is just the changes to proposed maximum FSR or floor space ratio in the R3 zone, and then some of the other sort of language updates for improved clarity throughout the bylaw.
Right.
And those are all redlined throughout the attached bylaw there to the report.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Troy.
Yeah.
Councillor Oakley.
Thank you. Around the site coverage and the setbacks, I'm curious about what they were set at previously, and we're moving in a different direction. Is the previous coverage, was that just around a societal thing around low density, or not seeking high density, coverage of the land, or was it around drainage? Was it, geomorphology? Or I'm just curious what it was, what's drawing that?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a few different changes specific to each zone that's being affected by that, but largely the changes are to increase the options available for siting of new construction. So in some cases, there's lesser setbacks, increased site coverage, increased floor space ratio. Your question is more about how were those defined initially. I'm not sure exactly what went into it before, but I think they're pretty typical for a lot of lower density development that was probably deemed desirable at the time. But given today's circumstances, we're recommending that we allow some more flexibility to try to allow for more housing options within our neighborhoods.
Thanks. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I read through this in glorious detail, just put my feet back and sat there and went through all of this, I have to give you guys kudos. I can't believe the amount of detail that you've incorporated to address the issues that have come forward at this time in our existence. It's just so easy to keep doing the same old, and you guys have just gone above and beyond with your public access and the way that you've looked at this and how you've divided up. You've just done an amazing job of this, and no small task. Redoing any kind of a charter or any kind like that is very complex and complicated and really can annoy people a lot. I don't think that's going to happen here.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. Sounds like you're motivated to get into the building business. Councillor Dallum.
Thank you very much for this. I've been rolling around the parking piece in my head, and I realized that this bylaw allows for more flexibility dependent on necessity. And it's not going to mean that future developments only use one parking space in their development. It just allows that flexibility. So short story long, I was just really processing how that would affect things. And I think that, the obvious need, developers are going to see that that's still generally a necessity. And I think that one of the biggest things that remains within this bylaw change is that line of sights for traffic concerns will still be front and center. So, it's all really well thought out, and I really appreciate the work.
Thank you, Councillor Dallin. Further comments? All right, hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thanks, Troy, and thanks, Justin, for all the good work on this one. We are slowly moving forward. All right, next up, we have the bylaw 2725, which is the 2022 to 2026 5-year financial plan. And it's for consideration of first 3 readings. And that is what the motion is, that council give first, second, and third reading to bylaw 2725, the 5-year financial plan. Amendment 1. Thank you, Councillor Goodwin. Thank you, Councillor Dallin, and Councillor McBain seconds. We'll break this up into two resolutions. We have a second one as part of that as well. Moved, seconder, and discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Over to you, Jim.
Thank you. So since the adoption of bylaw 2717 in May of this year, some new information, including the announcement of new grant programs, has come available, which has resulted in some changes to previously approved budget amounts and the opportunity to complete some additional projects during the current 5-year planning period. The community charter permits amendments to the financial plan bylaw at any time. And staff asked that council consider an amendment to incorporate the changes described in the report here. I won't go through them all. Most of the amendments being requested are the result of previous resolutions, which I've duplicated in the report for ease of reference. And some of the amendments council is seeing for the first time. So if there are any questions on any of them, please let me know and I'll do my best to explain.
All right. Councillor Dallin, go ahead.
My first reaction was a bit of a personal challenge, but really processing it all. I appreciate that the change difference between when those amendments happened and when we're at now, the increase really isn't as high as one might expect. So I really appreciate how well staff has done with that.
I appreciate that. The 2 larger amendments in here, which are the adjusted budget to the gymnastics club and the 2-inch main replacement in Marysville. The gymnastics club doesn't affect the budget. It's being funded through insurance proceeds, so it doesn't really have a dollar impact. And the 2-inch water main project is a reallocation of funds from another project. So again, it doesn't really impact the bottom line of the budget.
Councillor McBain.
Usually pretty good about that. The multi-use pathway, maybe I missed it or something. What was the reason for the increase on that?
It was, I don't recall the specifics of that one. It's as they got into the project. Troy, I'm not sure are you familiar with that one? Yeah, it was requested by the project manager. I think once they got into the project, there was just some initial costs.
Yeah, it's just interesting. It just seemed like a real cut and dry project. That's why I was concerned. I mean, 10% should be within a contingency or something.
Yeah. That project in particular, they're asking for a $37,833 increase. The good portion of that is grant funded, $204,000 of that one.
Fair enough.
Grant for, but
yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Further? Anything further, Jim? We're good?
Nope.
All right, I will call the question and all those in favor. Any opposed? Motion is carried.
Thanks, Council.
Thanks, Jim. Next up, we have the development permit for 300.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
Oh, the second part, I beg your pardon. Yep, thank you. The second part of that last bylaw for considerations, other than first three readings, was that council authorized staff to undertake the requisite advertising prior to bringing the bylaw back for consideration of adoption at a future meeting. Councillor Dallin moves. Councillor McBain seconds. Further discussion? All those in favor? That motion is carried. Now, on to development permit for 500 302nd Avenue. And the motion on the floor is that council approve the development permit to allow for a 66-unit residential development at 500 302 Avenue, subject to the conditions as outlined in the agenda. They're fairly lengthy, mostly standard, but they relate to this property in particular. And after we get a mover, Troy will fill us in. Councillor McBain moves and Councillor Dallin seconds. Over to you, Troy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so this project, council may recall at the last meeting, the development variance permit was up for consideration, which affected really just one of the 9 buildings proposed as part of this overall project. And that was a variance for the building setback from the 305th Street right away, and as well as the roof extension or the roof overhang projecting a little closer than what the bylaw requires. So council had approved that. Since that meeting, we've just been finishing up kind of discussions with the applicant around some of the civil works plans. We've essentially have the preliminary civil drawings all reviewed and mostly where we need them. Of course, we'll need to see the full detailed civil design, but we can handle that through as a condition of approval there. There will be a portion of this offsite upgrades that overlaps or aligns with a project that's been previously approved in the capital plan. So there'll be there's some cost sharing proposed there because essentially they're going to be moving that project ahead earlier than what we had anticipated in the capital plan. So a few more details to sort out there, but again, we can manage that as a condition of approval. The other stuff I think is pretty typical. In speaking with the proponents there, they're indicating that they're ready to mobilize on site here in September and start some of the initial site works there. So they're raring to go and excited to get moving on this project. So I think I'll leave it at that unless there's any specific questions or more background needed.
So Troy, as I was reading through this, there's a couple of things of concern. I do support this going ahead because of the need for rental housing, and I think it's a good use of that space. But this has been going on for a lot of years. It's used a lot of staff time, and when you get a situation like this, and everyone working in City Hall to enable these projects to go forward are paid for by the taxpayers. So this costs taxpayers a lot of money to have this go on for years. And I hope this is it. I hope this is the final one. So that's a concern I have, but it doesn't stop me from voting for this. The other concern I have as I was reading through the report was I get the sense that this is a brownfield site and I never saw in the report Ministry of Environment environmental certification requirement. It was all referred back to City Hall one way or another. So is this going to be, are they going to discover stuff there that requires Minister of Environment?
Yeah, so thank you. Good question there. Thank you for that. And I apologize for, we probably should have been more clear in the staff report there, but there is an existing certificate of compliance for this property. And there has been, given the age of that certificate, the proponents have done further investigation of the site, and there was, in short, everything is consistent with the certificate and complies with current standards. There was one area of some fill onto the property. It was kind of unidentified. I guess it was a part of a burnt out structure or some fill or a mixture of things that they've needed assessed. And that relates to the one condition of approval that's in there, that they continue to engage a qualified environmental professional to characterize that location, as well as to monitor and investigate any other potential sites that can be discovered. So a certificate of compliance on any site doesn't mean that the whole, every inch of the property has been reviewed in detail, but it's been reviewed to the standards and received that approval. So we're certainly comfortable in this moving forward, and that conditional approval will ensure that any items discovered during construction will be addressed in the proper way.
Yeah, oh, thank you for that, Troy. I appreciate that. I think it's, I kept looking for things that would be showstoppers, and I hopefully they will not find anything that's going to be a stopper there. The only other issue I have with all of this is the cost sharing. We do cross sharing for all throughout the city with various developments all the time, and it was referred to in a lot of different pieces of this cost sharing. I just kept going, gee, how much is that going to be? How much are we going to ask the taxpayers to share on this? Because, we just went through, the Watkins School site, and we're sharing with tech and private developer there as well. So it happens all around town, and it's not a stopper for me. I guess the reason I'm commenting about it is I just thought it would be nice to get a sense of how much are we talking about?
Yeah. My manager of operations is probably best to speak to that, but I think what I could summarize to say is we'll ensure that the city's contribution towards that cost sharing does not exceed the amount approved in the capital plan. And in fact, we're anticipating that it should be less than that. Again, we would have liked to have more refined and detailed at this time, but the scope of work there is, it's consistent with what we had already planned in the project. So I think it does certainly make some sense that cost shared, and like I said, it does need a amendment to that plan in the future to move that project forward with their anticipated timeline. And that may speak as well to your concern about, is this going to go ahead? That's a bit of an incentive to keep them moving forward. I think that that project aligns with our capital plan, and again, we can, and this happens on many other projects, I guess, where you can, approve zoning and approve development permits, even approve building permits some days, but you can't force them out on site to dig a hole or swing a hammer or whatever the case might be. But and it's hopefully the conditions are right this time, that they move ahead. I think this is our fourth or so crack at this site, I think, for a development plan, and I think it's probably the best one yet in terms of helping to meet some of our housing needs with the mix of units that are on there.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that you talked about conditions being right, Troy. Timing is everything in big projects like this, and we even have a situation right now where we've got interest rates going up. We have construction inflation that most would consider to be almost out of control, and these are external challenges that every developer and every builder has. And so, as Troy said, I think it behooves us as best we can, making sure all T's are crossed and I's are dotted, that we move forward in an expedient manner and ensure that we're not the ones holding things up. It's the developer. We always want things back on the developer. And certainly once this development permit is issued, you've seen all the conditions, it's all back on them. I would also state, and I don't think the developer would mind me saying this, but they've got financing is already lined up. Kind of all of the T's are crossed on this particular project for a need that is blatant in the community. So I'm pretty certain that short of some of these external issues coming up, that we're going to see pretty awesome development go up on that land down there. Go ahead, Kyle.
So just point of clarification, if this particular proponent, how long have they been in the queue? Has it been a year even yet?
Well, the current owner of the property that's behind this proposal has been the same owner as long as I've been here anyway. That's the same owner that we've been dealing with each time. But is your question more about when did this
proposal start? Yeah.
This project.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can, I don't know if I have that.
Give or
date
take, like
exactly,
just a
but-
rough-
But yeah, I mean, a few months ago, basically.
Okay.
It's been in the queue, application wise. I mean, we've certainly had multiple discussions with them over the years on some of the different projects and even leading up to this, certainly, you know.
Yeah,
prior
we've
to
seen
their
quite a few
application.
pivots. I was just,
Yeah.
I was thinking that this particular proposal hadn't been something that had been ongoing.
Yeah,
My other question was the southern buildings, they have sprinkler systems. I see that like it's, is that a requirement of ours for buildings that have less access for the fire truck?
for building, there's some building code requirements that have triggered to require sprinklers in some of those, given just the arrangement and the accessibility of those units. So that triggers those requirements of the building code. Same thing would happen in any other community that had a similar proposal and similar situation. Yeah.
Okay, that solves that curiosity. Thank you.
All right, further? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Awesome. Thanks for that, Troy. And in fact, we have a second piece to this particular item, and that is that when preparing the 2023 to 27 financial plan, staff be directed to advance the timing of the 302nd Avenue 2-inch main replacement and upgrade water capital project from 2024 to 2023, and that the current budgeted project funding be adjusted to reflect the developer contribution once the cost sharing formula has been determined. Councillor McBain moves. Councillor Dallum seconds. Further discussion? All those in favor? That motion is carried. Excellent. Thanks, Troy. Okay, on to the financial update report for the first 6 months of this year, January 1st to June 30th. And the motion on the floor is the council receive the report. Mover, please. Councillor Dallum, thank you. Councillor McBain seconds. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just provide a brief overview here. I won't go into too much detail. The purpose of this report is really to provide the general public and council with a summary overview of council's actual operating revenues and expenditures in comparison to budget, as well as to provide an indication of the progress made towards completion of capital and non-capital projects. If you look at the page following the cover page of the budget variance summary, it lists all the departments, revenues and expenditures for each, as well as the capital and non-capital. When looking at this, you kind of have to remember that some of these expenditures and revenues are seasonal, such as the operation of the arenas. So the revenue and expenditures are going to be incurred at different times of the year, of course. So a few of the numbers that will jump out here under the revenue side, fire department is at 13%. A lot of the revenue and expenditure budgeted for the fire department has to do with the fire fuel management projects. And of course, those not only happen at different times of the year, but also are very weather dependent. So some of them may not end up happening, but certainly not a lot of them had happened by the end of June, which is why both the revenues and expenditures are low for the fire department. The planning services department, you'll note that the revenue is almost at 100% for the year. A lot of that revenue, most of it is due to building permit revenue. Those permits, by the end of June, we had budgeted 150,000 for the year. And I think by the end of June, we were at just under $190,000. So doing quite well there, exceeding budget again on that side of things. The financial services on the expenditure side, that's the low number there. You'll see it's only at 11.4%. That's due to the taxation revenue that's collected for other agencies such as the regional district, the province for school. We've got $4.8 million of that we collected, and we're obligated to pay that out to the regional district and those other agencies by the first week of August. So you'll see that in the next report. It'll come up closer to budget. The capital on capital projects, most of them are quite a ways under the 50% of the way through the year that we are. That's due to the fact that we're kind of at the end of June, we were just getting into the busy season for construction. So once the third quarter report comes out, you'll see that a bunch of those projects will have been completed, and only the ones to be completed in the fourth quarter will be left showing as outstanding.
Lots of Q3.
There's lots going on in
No,
Q3.
It's a busy time right now. Yeah. Questions? I don't have any either. Okay. Sorry, Jim.
No, that's
Oh,
all right.
Okay, he's not going to get off easy. Go ahead. sir.
No, not a question for Jim, but just further to Councillor Oakley's comments about taxpayers footing the bill for development. You can see that the planning services brings in quite a bit of revenue for building permits, development permits, zoning applications. So the developer does pay to get these applications in front of council. And cost sharing is a bit of a different beast, but depending on the benefit to the neighborhood of doing some work while the developer's doing it is how the cost formula is determined. So it's usually somewhere in the 90-10 kind of ratio with the developer paying the lion's share. So we are very cautious of the taxpayers footing the bill for development or consideration of multiple applications over decades.
Scott, go ahead.
If I could respond to that, Mr. Mayor, I was referring to only multiple projects for multiple years of staff time, and then they don't happen. And that was referring to the Marysville situation, and it doesn't usually happen elsewhere. And that's not a fault of City Hall. It's just, we're trying to accommodate projects to go forward, and sometimes they just don't go forward, as you discover. Anyway, it's not a blaming City Hall per se. It's just, and there's no way around it, really. You have to go with it and see if things go and run and get built. But the Marysville situation, I had to comment on that because it's been going on for a lot of years. That's a lot of time, staff time. So anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Oakley.
I just want.
I was just going to add, like, just to clarify, we are accepting or receiving application fees each time around, right? So each time there's a new proposal, it's a new zoning proposal, new development permit application, whatever the case is, there's a new application fee at that time, which isn't always full cost recovery, but it certainly helps to recover some of the costs.
Thanks, Troy. All right, call the question on receipt. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Next up, thanks for staying at the podium, Jim. We have the procurement report for the first 6 months, and the motion on the floor is that council receive the report. Mover, please. Councillor McBain, thank you, and Councillor Roberts, thank you. Discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a report that's referenced in the purchasing guidelines and procedures document. That's something that staff will bring forward to council from time to time throughout the year. The purpose of which is to provide information related to the authorization for the procurement of construction goods and services for which a formal solicitation was undertaken. So an RFP or a tender was issued. So these are those awards for the time frame January 1st to June 30th. There's just over $6 million worth of procurements summarized in the final 2 pages of the report here, the largest of which was the Boundary Street reconstruction was just over $1 million. And then the fire engine purchase, which subsequent to authorization, the order was placed, but we don't anticipate receiving that $820,000 truck until sometime in 2023. But again, this report is, it's produced just to give council and general public an idea of where the dollars are being spent and who they're going to.
All right, thank you. Council, questions or comments? Councillor Oakley.
I'm remembering to turn my mic on. I'm sure Maurice is very happy with me tonight. I just a comment, Jim, around the fire truck. The cost of of an apparatus for the taxpayers in Kimberley, it's unbelievable compared to other things. And there's no way around that. There's no way that you can work with other municipalities to, buy bulk or whatever.
No.
I just, every time I see the price of those vehicles, I just shake my head. I cannot believe the cost of those things.
It's a real challenge. I cringe a bit myself when I see those. And it, as council is aware, it doesn't realize how good a condition that truck is in if it's yeared out. we're obligated to replace it. Otherwise, we don't get the insurance benefits of having that piece of apparatus in the hall. So something we're required to do.
Further comments or questions? Call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you, Council.
Thanks, Jim. Next up, we have the check run in the order of actually 2 runs. The first one, $501,356. The second, $529,320. Mover, please. Councillor Roberts, thank you. And Councillor Dallum seconds. Anything non-standard or of interest that should be noted, Councillor Roberts?
Well, as you've just seen in the previous report, we've been really, really busy giving away money to big things, and a lot of them are in this last 2 check runs. Stuff to do with electrifying the mountains, stuff to do with the purchase of vehicles, things to do with the work that's being done on the major digging up of the road up above there, and the money just trickles away.
So
It's
it's-
business as usual.
Yeah, so it's worth noting that for every check that's written, it is a budgeted amount and that the amount was anticipated. So
Spending as required, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Further comments, council? Call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. All right, next up, we have items of correspondence. We'll take these in 2 chunks. First, 1.1 and 1.2, which have potential action associated with them. Could I have a mover, please, for those 2 items? Councillor McBain, thank you. Councillor Goodwin seconds. Okay, discussion. So the first item from the email from Ilona Hale. I'm not sure why this is open for action here. Help me out on that, Maurice. Scott, go ahead.
Maybe the action would be to write back to Ilona and let her know what is in the works for charging stations. That's a guess. I was away last week.
Typically, I don't know that we respond to all of the correspondence that comes in. Go ahead.
She references some sort of a map that she was hoping we could be part of a network of locations, perhaps. So Troy's nodding in assent there that he knows more about this than I do. Is there something that we need to sign
What's
up
the
for?
acronym here, Troy, if there is one?
Yes. Couple questions there, I guess. I'm happy to follow up with the letter writer there and just explain what work we've done to date in terms of putting us on the map of the EV charging network. As council may recall, we've got now 4 different level 2 chargers. The writer here is asking for the fast charge level 3 chargers. We are working towards that. Don't have any solid information or solid plan to share quite yet with council, but we have a few things in play that hopefully we can make sure that we add 1 or more level 3 chargers, and that is a gap in the network, I guess, of EV charging stations. They're certainly, if anyone's been paying attention, they're spreading, growing rapidly across everywhere, I guess. So it's important that we do get those. Doesn't have to be necessarily something supplied by the city. I think we're getting to that point. We're going to start seeing some of the service stations adding those themselves, with or without some encouragement from local governments. But I think there's going to be more and more of that as demand continues to grow and as market conditions change for the growth of EV vehicles.
Thanks for that, Troy. So you'll follow up. No
Can
need
do.
for us to take an action on that.
Can do.
Go ahead, Sandra.
Troy, could I ask you a question about that? Is there a probability that one could have an outlet in their home? If I buy an electric car, can I have
Yes.
that installed at my house?
Yeah, for sure.
I expect we'll see it on new builds pretty soon.
Yeah. In fact, some local governments are moving towards that as well to require them on new builds. But it's in many cases a fairly easy retrofit to add. maybe not the fast charge, but the level 2 charger or
Thank you. Thank you.
Counselor Goodwin.
Troy, do you know how the prices for level 3 charging stations have gone? Are they still $50,000 to $100,000 per?
there can be, and that's usually where the big hangup is there is, and that's why you often see them as a bit of a cluster because of the electrical transformer upgrades and that kind of stuff that's required. So depends a lot on the specifics of the location and the network within that area. So there's a whole another level of planning required for that.
All right. Thanks very much, Troy.
You bet.
The other piece of correspondence in this one was the email from Thijs van Gaza relating to the crossing of Highway 95A from Forest Crown over to the Mark Creek Trail. Councillor Roberts, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I read that with great concern, actually. I think I hadn't really considered about those little kids living up on that hill trying to get down to school. I appreciate that it's a highway issue, but I'm wondering if there couldn't be some plan that could maybe create a pathway down over the Sunshine Hill or something that might be a safe passage.
So at some
So-
point to get over there, you have to go over the highway. And no matter what that path is, it's MOTI
Yeah.
ownership
Yeah.
and accountability for that. What I responded to Thijs and basically said I would put this on our list of things we talk to MOTI about every 4 to 6 months. I think we've got another session with them coming up in September. And so we'll get it on their radar.
Yeah, because that number of kids is going to grow and grow.
And at this point, that's pretty much all we can do.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Dallin.
So there is a series of trails on that side of the highway, and it would seem to me a bit wiser to have the crossing either at one end or the other end of that stretch of road where it slows down to 50. Just a consideration of that side.
So, yeah, thanks for the comment on that. I think it's important to remember that anything to do with the highway, the engineers from MOTI are the ones that provide the plans, approve the plans, and, do the authorization to go forward.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate that. My comment was strictly for persons currently making the decisions of crossing that highway and,
Okay.
doing it in the safest way possible.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Councillor Dallin. Councillor Oakley.
I don't think we should be relying on Ministry of Highways because of the track record. It's really difficult to get stuff approved by them. I think in this situation, we should be fanning this email out to the school district should be made aware of this situation. The Trail Society should be made aware of a need of a trail. There are ways to go around where you can stay on the Forest Crown side of the highway, and you can actually connect through the new road that comes down the south end of Forest Crown now goes on to St. Mary's Road. It's a long ways around, but there is a road down there in the start of basically a trail system. And the other piece of this is, this is it would be very expensive to do this. It would take some planning, but I think to approach Ministry of Highways, that's going to absolutely get nothing done. I just don't have any faith in that happening. And I think the Trail Society could do more with this than anything.
Well, Troy, did you want to make a comment?
Just wanted to, I guess, add to the conversation there and remind council that a similar request, I guess, it did come up a few different times throughout the development of the Active Transportation Network Plan. So it is some variation of this, I think, at least is an identified project in that plan. It is lower down the list, just because of some of the things Councilor Oakley was just saying there about the challenges of cost and distance and all that thing, all those different factors. So, but it is within that planning process, and because of that, we'll get reviewed as that's reviewed and updated over time. We are finishing some of the projects that were higher on the list there, a little more easy to achieve and everything. So I think, because it's in there, it'll get some attention. Some of it does require involvement of ministry, but and other stakeholders in the community too.
All right, thanks for that,
Yeah.
Troy. I would be remiss if I didn't defend MOTI to some degree. The process that we have in place with them now with our regular meetings and the laundry list of things that we keep on going forward has actually been very productive. The ministry has been extremely responsive and will continue to be. There are certain things that they move slower on than others. For example, crosswalks. Crosswalks are not something that they like to see for a whole bunch of reasons, or too many crosswalks, but the response that we get from the ministry actually is very positive. So takes a lot of work to get some of this stuff done for sure, Councillor Oakley, but the ministry doesn't hide when we bring things forward. Anything further on this? Councillor McBain, you're struggling there. Okay, so we'll call the question on receipt of these two items. All those in favor? That motion is passed. And we need a motion to bring in the other two items, 2.1 and 2.2. Motion, please. Councillor Roberts, thank you. And Councillor Goodwin seconds. Do we have any comments on either of these, Council? All right, hearing none, call the question on receipt. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Awesome, thank you. Okay, that is the end of the specific agenda. We're now into question period. And while we wait to find out if anybody watching tonight has any questions, or I guess the first thing we'll do is ask if we have any questions from the gallery here in council chamber. So we'll open it up then to anybody watching from YouTube. The number to call is 800-741-7180. And when prompted, the meeting number is 2496-887-4567. Please give us a call if you have any questions relating to any of the items on the agenda this evening. While we're waiting to see if anybody calls in, we'll do councillor items. All right, who wants to be first tonight? Do we have any volunteers? Councillor Roberts, go ahead.
Yes, I'm at the end of the table, Mr. Mayor, but sadly, I have nothing to report.
Okay.
We haven't had a meeting since June.
Okay, thanks, Sandra. Kyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Center for the Arts has an interim, think of the term now, say director, and she's doing quite well, very passionate, modest as well. So she, she's been an excellent addition. Besides that, the fall fair may or may not be going forward. I received word that it's in question due to the Marysville Arena remediation may not be done in time. So that's hanging in the balance right now. We'll see what happens. Otherwise, nothing else to report.
All right, thank you. Councillor Goodwin.
I have very little to report, except that it takes longer to recover from pneumonia than I had anticipated, so my energy levels are pretty low. That has nothing to do with this next thing, but this is probably a good time for me to announce officially that I won't be running for council again. So I think 3 terms has been sufficient. I hope I've been able to contribute. But I'm afraid the Aspen project is up and running. We've had our first 5,000 people at the web page, and that's going to take up a bunch of my time in the future. So
Wow.
I need to focus a bit more on the Aspen proposal. So there you go.
Is that it? Well, for this evening, we'll let you off a little easier, but more to come. When you say you have made some contribution, I think over the 3 terms you've been here, it's been an outstanding contribution, Kent. And I know the rest of council staff and certainly the entire community feels exactly the same way. So thank you very much for all your service. Okay. Councillor Oakley.
Ditto on your service, Councillor Goodwin. I sure appreciate that you've been here, and I've always contributed I haven't always agreed with you, but that's part of the political process. And I also question that you've been not feeling well, because every time I bump into you in the last couple of weeks, it's been about 2 hours back in the nature park, at which time we would get into a discussion on the Aspen project and I'd get thoroughly beat up by all the stats. from
Then I
Councillor
have to
Goodwin.
go home and have a nap.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you. I really appreciate you being here. It's been an interesting 11 years to, share with you as we worked for the city of Kimberley. My report is around the Sullivan Mine Underground Railroad. They've had some record days, like amazing busyness. And the only low number that they're receiving is dogs. There's not enough dogs riding the train these days. I don't know what the deal is there, but anyway, they're down a little bit. But people wise, they're very, very busy. The other thing I wanted to mention is Cayenne. Kimberley Youth Action Network is gearing up for the fall and been very busy. Most of this has not been face-to-face meetings. It's just over the phone or email back and forth. Just keeps you busy. But anyway, that's all I have to report this evening. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Daryl. Jason?
I think we had one health center meeting between these two meetings, so I'll speak for Kent on that one. We'll give him a break. He's on the way out. But just kidding, Kent. Yeah, I just working through some things there with new tenants, and nothing really earth-shattering to report. But all kidding aside, to Kent and well, to Daryl as well, who also announced. I've had to sit near you guys for almost 4 years now, and I really appreciate it. I've learned a lot, and it's been a real pleasure working with you guys. Get to know you a little bit better, and just kind of sitting back, especially the first year. I remember just kind of sitting back and listening and taking it all in, and I really appreciate it. So good luck, and that's it for me.
Thanks very much for the report. Appreciate that, Jason. All right. Do we have anything else? Well, there have been a few things going on, but I don't think you want to hear about all the visitors that Bev and I have had over the last couple of weeks. Family and friends that have been here in a very long time. So I've had some holiday time. At least that's what I'm calling it, is holiday time. So that will be all I report on this evening. Okay. So thanks everybody. With that, we would like a motion to adjourn. Councillor McBain, thank you. Councillor Oakley seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. We are done. Thank you. Goodbye.